Does it ever feel to you like you have an elephant sitting on your shoulders? I feel that way right now. This Sunday, we're going to be reading during our Sunday worship service from Psalm 38 in preparation for the sermon this Sunday. And Psalm 38:4 says this: "For my iniquities have gone over my head. Like a heavy burden, they are too heavy for me." I think so many of us, including myself and many others that I've talked to, I think so many of us, especially during this season, are feeling a heavy burden. Feels like we have an elephant sitting on us all day, all week, for the last 15, 16 weeks, maybe even before the pandemic and the coronavirus came our way. Many of us were carrying heavy burdens, and those burdens have just gotten heavier and heavier and heavier. Whether you're a parent that has small children at home, whether you're a worker who now has to work extra hard to make up for some of the loose ends that have come because of the economic impact of the virus, or whether you're a senior citizen who is feeling the distance of being away from family and the travel restrictions, whatever the case may be, many of us are carrying heavy, heavy burdens. Psalm 38 is a psalm of David where he's talking about the burden of sin, the burden of iniquity, the burden of the things that he is now feeling because of his own sin. Now, many of us today are feeling burdens that may or may not be the result of sin itself, but Psalm 38 is talking about that in particular. And he says, "They are too heavy for me. They're like a heavy burden. They've gone up over my head." It's a heavy burden. Feels like an elephant on our shoulders. But Psalm 38, for as much as it talks about vivid imagery about the burdens that we carry and the results of sin and the results of living in a fallen world where things like viruses come and infect us, or consequential things come that were unexpected and change the course of our everyday life, change our rhythms, and turn into these heavy burdens. For as much vivid imagery as there is about the effects of burdens, it also doesn't leave us without hope. Later in Psalm 38, in verse 15, it says, "But for you, O Lord, do I wait. It is you, O Lord, who will answer me." And it says, verse 17, "I am ready to fall, and my pain is ever before me. I confess my iniquity. I am sorry for my sin." And then he finishes in verses 21 and 22, "Do not forsake me, O Lord. O my God, be not far from me. Make haste to help me, O Lord, my salvation." That's the cry of our heart during this season and during the course of our whole lives. As we feel the elephant on the back of our shoulders weighing us down, feeling the heaviness of it, our cry is, "Do not forsake me, O Lord. Be not far from me. Be quick to help me. Make haste to help me, O Lord, my salvation." So this Sunday, we're going to be looking at a passage in Matthew 11, verses 28 to 30, where we get to see God's heart for the weak, God's heart for the oppressed, God's heart for the burdened, God's heart for those who feel like the toil and the work never ends, the labor never finishes. We get to see what God's response is to the weak, what God's relationship is to the weak, and ultimately what God's answer is to the weak. So I hope you can join us either in person or via our live stream this upcoming Sunday. And what we're going to see, just to give you a sneak peek, what we're going to see is that God is not far from the weak. In fact, it's during our weakness that God reveals himself actually as the one who sits right next to us as a lamb. He is gentle and lowly in heart, is what Matthew 11 teaches us, is that he sits right down with us for those of us that are vulnerable and weak and burdened. Jesus is a lamb, and he comes and he dwells right here with us. And his promise is not to leave us or forsake us, as we see so often in the scriptures. But if we really do cry out to God, and if we ask him to make haste to be with us, what does he do? But he actually leads us into a beautiful place. He leads us, as Psalm 23 says, into green pastures. He makes us lie down, and he brings us into a beautiful spot. Surely we have a beautiful inheritance, the psalmist says in other places. So, for you that are weary, for you that are burdened, for you that feel like the weight of elephants are on your shoulders right now, come to Jesus. He says, come to me, all who labor, who are toiling, who are weak, who are weary, and who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Amen.